Welcome to Understanding Your Flute, Episode 2. We're still on Part 1, What You've Got. And I'd like to begin this episode with a piece of rope. And the story, it was the late 50s. I was a Cub Scout. It was the basement of the Franklin Street School, and Mr. Moxley was teaching us how to tie a square knot. And he was very careful to say, right over left, left over right. Well, I was left-handed, and my mother was a bit of a rebel. She was reading Rachel Carlson and Silent Spring and that kind of stuff. And so I said to myself, and I couldn't have been very old, I was I don't know, a kid, and I said, oh, I wonder how it would work with left hand, left over right, right over left, and son of a gun, I got a square knot just the same way. And then somehow I had this great revelation, which we human beings tend to have more regularly than the average squirrel, if you can hear me what I'm saying. And so I thought, let's look at the square knot from the point of view of the rope. So I label one end of the rope with this bulldog clip, so we'll call this the bulldoggy end, and we'll just put the bulldoggy end over. And what happens next? Well, we try it, but what I figured it out pretty quickly is the bulldoggy end goes on top twice. So the real theory of the square knot in terms of the rope is the same end goes on top twice. And this is the problem that makes it difficult for you to understand, for us to understand our flute. It would be a lot easier if all of the keys were open keys, or if all of the keys were closed keys, but they're not. Some keys are open keys, most of them, and some keys are closed keys. Two of them, the D sharp and the G sharp. Now, when you open a closed key, it tells the truth. You open the D sharp key, you are opening the D sharp hole, and your flute, other things being equal, plays a D sharp. But when you close an open key, you close the B, the B and the B flat key, it's playing an A, which is a key you haven't touched. And this is something that we can't change, and we have to be cognizant of this. And if we are, then things work, then we can understand things. So what I'm going to do is run up and down the flute and talk about it a little bit and see what we can learn. A regular fingering, what's known as a regular fingering, is a fingering where all the sound holes above are closed, and the one sound hole that is sounding is open. The shortest possible foot on a flute is the D foot, and this is the D hole. And just think about it, is the minute you look at this hole, you're thinking C sharp, because it is closed by the C sharp touch. And if you look at your fingering chart, it will say C sharp and point to this, whereas it is the key, of course, that closes the D hole. Next, we open the D hole to play a D sharp. We open the D sharp hole to play the D sharp, and this is the truth. The the arrow on your fingering chart points at this key and it says D sharp, which in fact it is. It covers the D sharp hole. Now, to play an E, we release the E hole. And notice we are keeping the D sharp hole open. You will remember from episode 1 that the holes, which now you can't see so well because the keys are all on the flute, are not big enough. Theobald Boehm was not able to make them big enough. Therefore, at least 2 holes are required below any given fingering to make it sound good. And this is a principle which will function all the way on the flute and gets us into all kinds of interesting trouble. And you watch it happen. So we opened the E hole and we play an E. Not so odd, not so hard to understand. And we open the F natural hole to play an F natural. And then we lift the first finger of our right hand and lordy-be-dordy, it opens 2 holes. Remember this G hole, the one where you had to grow a new finger? There it is. And now, in order to play the F sharp, we have to close that G hole. And we need to leave at least 1 hole open below that, because the holes are not big enough. So Theobald Boehm has figured out that we should use the key that covers the E hole to close that G hole. So to play an F sharp, we lift 1 finger and drop another. That is opening 2 holes and closing 1, and you will notice there are 2 holes open below. There are 2 holes open below the fingering, which follows the rule that 2 holes must be open below the fingering. You probably know that a trill fingering is acceptable. Here it's stronger than this one. One of the things that flutists don't do is finger exercises like pianists do to make all the fingers the same strength. So we prefer to use this one, and there are other ways to close the G hole. You can reach up with your hand and close the G hole. I have a photograph here somewhere, if I can find it, of a modern flute. Here it is, a photograph of a modern flute, and you will see custom-made modern flute. I think it might be, I don't quite remember who made it, but it's contemporary, obviously. That is a touch soldered to the key over the G hole, so it can be more easily reached with the first finger of the right hand. This is a legitimate fingering. Okay, so now we're going up the flute. We have the G, and there's plenty of holes open below it. And now we come to G sharp. You will remember from episode 1, you have 2 G sharp holes. I put a cork into one of them when I carried you down this flute. So we open a G sharp with our little finger of our right hand, and there are holes open below it, so it sounds well. And then to play an A, we lift the ring finger of our left hand, which opens 2 keys, one of them being a second G sharp hole. Call it the slave G sharp hole if you like. And this allows the A hole to speak well because the hole below it is open. If this was not here, we would have to hold the G sharp key open while we played the A, and we would have a little difficulty, at least Theobald Boehm decided, in in wiggling the ring finger of the left hand. And that's why that's there, at least one of the reasons why it's there. We'll talk about it more in part 2 of Understanding the Flute, which will be titled Why You Have It. So now we lift the middle finger of our left hand, and it also opens 2 keys, the B flat and the B. You will remember when you grew an extra finger to close the B key. Mr. Bohm has given you an extra finger. He has used the F natural key, the F sharp, the key that covers the F sharp hole, the key under the first finger of your right hand, to close, yes, this one, to close the B natural hole. In order you might get a B flat, and there's 2 holes below, and then you open the B hole, and there are other ways to close the B hole, of course. There's the thumb key, and there's this little thing here, which allows you also to reach up. Remember that reach up. Very few people use the reach ups, but they work well from time to time. And so we have the B, and a half step above B is C natural, which we open with our thumb by releasing our thumb, and there are holes open below it. And then we open that miserable little C sharp hole that we talked about by releasing the first finger. And now we're up. It's really quite simple. Let's go down and see what kind of trouble we can get into. So, to play a C, we close the C sharp hole, and the thumb hole is sounding. That is the C hole. We close the C hole, and we are playing a B, and there it is. We close the B hole by any number of means. Let's use the first finger of the right hand, and now we're playing a B flat. And you'll notice all the way down, we're operating one hole below. When we close C sharp, we're not thinking, I am closing C sharp. We're thinking, I am playing C natural. So this fingering is known as the C natural fingering. When we close the C natural hole with our thumb, we think we're playing a B. This is the B fingering. It had nothing to do with the B hole, except it leaves it alone. And this is where the rope technique, the square knot technique comes in, is the vocabulary of your flute, is the vocabulary of what you do with your hands, and does not relate well to what's happening with the flute. And this is why it is difficult to understand. So we drop the middle finger of the left hand, and we are playing an A, and here is the A hole, and there is also a G sharp hole open below it because it needs to be to make for the A to speak. We close the A, it closes the G sharp hole. We open another G sharp hole with a little finger. We're playing G sharp, and now we're back to the right hand, and we close that G key. Remember, that's where you had to grow a finger. We do it down here, and then all 3 of these keys close the G. So we have the, let's see, F sharp, F natural, E natural, E natural, E flat. The D sharp is open, of course, for the E natural and the E flat. And then we play D, and that is the hole underneath the key, which we think of as C sharp, but that is in fact the D hole. And you can have as many as you want at the bottom, but they all have to be open. And we'll just stop at the D foot, because you probably have a B foot anyway, so there's no sense stopping at the C foot for me. But just remember that the end of the flute is a sound hole. In this case, it is the C natural hole, this being the C sharp hole. See, this is not the C sharp hole, it's the C sharp fingering, but the C sharp hole is one hole below. That's what you kind of have to wrap your head around to understand your flute. Now, it's time to go back to the mechanics. And I know that this is not about me, but I have been a, let me see, I have been a junior high school science teacher, and I have gotten pretty good at explaining complicated things like air pressure and gravity to kids who may not be all that interested in understanding them. And so, trust me, as I use a simple system, which we are all aware of, to explain how your flute works. And this is the toilet paper tube, of course, is what I call a sleeve. And that is the silver sleeve on your flute, that everything that moves, all the keys and touches and clutches and so forth. And I say clutch, we'll talk about clutch, are all soldered to. And these are your posts, as your flute has many of these posts, and the piece inside represents the steel that goes between the posts and is in the center of all toilet paper tubes, sleeves. And here is a simple, by the way, just so I don't disappoint my daughter, this showed up by accident on our Facebook, our family Facebook channel. We have 4 daughters, and one of them, who has a husband and 2 children, took this photograph spontaneously in her bathroom. Guess who never thinks to replace the toilet paper in her house? Guess Mama replaces the toilet paper, and that's the joke if you think it's funny, or that's outrageous if you're into being outraged. But that's where this came from, and I think it'd be fair to tell you that. At any rate, we're talking about the flute and how simple it is how your flute works. So I have here 2 more toilet paper tubes, which represent the sleeves on your flute. And you will notice that some of these sleeves on your flute are very close to each other. They run down parallel to each other. And what I have done is I have pinched a piece of duct tape and stuck it on this one, and I have pinched a piece of duct tape and stuck it on this one. And if you put these 2 sleeves, don't forget that there are steels inside them. If you put these 2 sleeves next to each other and you twist one sleeve, it twists the other sleeve. And if you twist this sleeve, it twists that sleeve. And this is called a clutch. And now you know everything about how your flute works. You have lots of clutches on your flute. They look different from this, but this is how they function. Interestingly, while I was doing this, it occurred to me, you know how we human beings have these great revelations, and I had another one, is actually on your flute, things don't turn very far. They only turn a little way. So actually, these clutchy things are basically each one tooth on a theoretical gear wheel. Think of a clock works, okay? You see the wheels on the clock with the teeth all around them? That's what this is. But it only needs one tooth because it's not moving that far. So here's a revelation. I have just invented the steampunk alto flute. Imagine an alto flute. You know who makes that funny one with all the brass on it, and looks like solid gold and everything. And imagine an alto flute with big gear wheels with teeth all around. I mean, they do the same thing, but they have these big wheels with teeth all around, and and oil caps, spring top oil caps, you know. And anyway, so if you're a flute maker, make me one, please. And no price is too high for a steampunk alto. And anyhow, so this is the end of my explanations of how your flute works. And what I want to do now is talk about one problem that all flutes have sooner or later. And most of you have come up against this problem. And this is the problem of the clutch adjustment. There's all three of these keys close that G hole, which is the one that you had to grow a special finger for. And they do it by a series of simple clutches here. And the problem is that the keys, when they close the B flat, or this one closes the B flat, or when they close the G key, don't go down far enough because they are stopped by their hole. Mr. Bowen is using, impolitely, using a key with a pad that closes the hole for a mere touch. When you're playing an F sharp, you're using the key with the pad that covers the E natural hole, just as if it was an ordinary touch, just like it would be a touch for your trill keys or your C sharp that closes the D hole. And it doesn't go far enough unless this part of your flute is in perfect adjustment. And no flute can stay in perfect adjustment because the pads wear and the clutches are all adjusted, of course, and they wear. So here is what we do. Here is a suggestion. Find your clutches. That's a bunch of stuff here in the bottom. And without doing anything else, wiggle your G hole, the key that covers your G natural hole. And you will see part of that clutch rise. You see how flat it is? It looks just like my piece of duct tape on the toilet paper. Duct tape, okay? Same thing. All right, clutch. Now, that is the place where it's pushed up by any one of these keys. That one pushes it up, see it go? It pushes on something down here. This one pushes it up, see it go? So if your flute is not functioning well, if your low range is weak, close to F sharp, look at your clutch, and tap the key over your G hole. And if that clutch wiggles, that means that this key over the G hole is not covering the G hole. And that's the reason why your flute is not working well. The same can be true of the B flat, which also has clutches, which you can find. But you have so many alternates for B flat. If you can't play a B flat down here because your flute is worn, you can use your thumb key or this one here. So the B flat's not the problem. The only serious problem that must happen to you sooner or later is going to be this problem here. So that's how you identify the problem, is you figure out by tapping the G which clutch it is, and then you finger your F sharp here and see if it moves, and finger it here and see if it moves, and finger it here and see if it moves. And this flute is in perfect condition because it was just restored by some very, very good people. I've forgotten, but I'll remember. I should certainly praise him. The fellows, anyway, it was a lovely job. And if it wiggles, then it needs to be readjusted. And it needs to be readjusted by a specialist. Don't bring your flute to a general instrument repair person. Only bring your flute to a flute specialist. Flutes are special. And if I have time, I'll explain this to you and demonstrate it. But we'll see how it goes. I'd like to finish part one, what you've got, 5 minutes. It's not going to happen if I don't keep moving. Okie dokie. Uh, so what the old-fashioned trick back in 1955 and 1960 was to cut a little tiny piece of Scotch tape and slip it in there, and that makes this key push that key down a little farther. It doesn't matter whether the stickum was up or down because it doesn't matter what side it's stuck to. It, it sometimes worked. Today, what we use is a little tiny piece of sticky note, which is less gooey than Scotch tape, a little thicker, and that can be slid in there, and it's a little less nasty. However, if it is too thick, then when you finger F sharp, you'll cover the G hole very nicely, but the E hole will not be covered because this key will not go down far enough, and then it will leak here. And this is a very, you have to be lucky for this to work. And you'll find in my YouTube channel a presentation titled Flute Leak Remedy, where I diaper that G hole with pipe thread tape, which works a little better because it is moderately self-adjusting, but it's still lousy and also makes your flute ugly. But that is what to watch for. When you have trouble with a flute, it's almost always there. And at this point, I will say to be continued, and I will see you for Understanding Your Flute, episode 3. This is my website where I sell wooden spoons, and that is my name, Dan Dustin, where you can find me on a YouTube channel if you happen to be seeing this somewhere else. And I will see you next time for Understanding Your Flute, episode 3, where we will begin part 2.